My own son tried to kill me with a box of chocolates. I only survived because I made my daughter-in-law and grandkids jealous. When he called and asked, "Mom, did you eat some?" I said the one sentence that blew up his whole plan. "Oh, Brian," I laughed. "I didn't eat them. I took them to your house. I gave them to Kara and the kids. You know how they love sweets." On the other end, he went dead quiet. Then he screamed, "You did what?" My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 72 years old, and my whole life used to orbit one person, my son, Brian. I wasn't the woman who gave birth to him. I was the woman who chose him. I met him when he was 2 years old. His parents had died in a bad car accident on an icy highway outside Chicago. He was this tiny boy in the hospital pediatric wing with big brown eyes and a little blue truck clutched in his hand. The first time I picked him up, he grabbed my necklace and buried his face in my neck. He smelled like baby shampoo and tears. The social worker watched us for a minute and said, "Sometimes the child chooses the parent." I took him home 6 weeks later. His last name changed to mine. He became Brian Carter, my miracle. We weren't rich. I was a nurse in a small hospital. But that boy never went hungry and never felt alone. When he started preschool, he came home with a crayon drawing of a stick figure with curly hair and huge glasses. "That's you, Mama," he said proudly. At the top it said, in wobbling letters, "Best Mom in the World." I still have that drawing. At his high school graduation, he walked off that stage, cap crooked, diploma in hand, and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. He whispered, "We did it, Mom," and he cried into my shoulder. Not me, him. Back then, if you told me that same boy would one day look me in the eye and call me a burden, I would have laughed in your face. But that's the problem. When you love somebody too hard, you don't believe they can turn into a stranger. I worked double shifts, night shifts, holidays, whatever they'd give me. I packed his lunches, paid for his soccer shoes, took out a small home equity loan so he could go to a decent college without drowning. Every decision was, is this good for Brian? Not, is this good for me? I told myself that was what a good mother did. What I didn't see was how kindness without boundaries slowly turns into something else. It doesn't stay love. It becomes self-destruction. When he got a job at a finance firm downtown, I was so proud. I wanted to stop strangers on the street and tell them. He started wearing crisp shirts and shiny watches. He called me every Sunday. "Hey, Mama, you eating okay? Need anything?" He'd bring over girlfriends. One make me a lemon cake. One helped me fix my Wi-Fi. They came and went. Then he brought Kara. The first time Kara walked into my little red brick bungalow, she looked like she'd step out of a catalog. Perfect hair, lashes, nails, and a phone glued to her hand. I was nervous, not gonna lie. I'd made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, biscuits, the full impress the future wife spread. She stepped into my living room, looked around at my crocheted pillows and plastic-covered couch, and gave me that smile. You know the one. mouth wide, eyes still dead. "Wow," she said, "this place is so vintage. Vintage. Not cozy, not homey. Vintage?" I laughed it off. "Vintage just means it's lasted longer than the trend, sweetie." She sat down, all careful so she didn't wrinkle her dress. During dinner, she talked about content and engagement and brand deals. She was building some kind of online following. I didn't really get it. Brian looked at her like she'd invented oxygen. I tried. I really did. I asked questions. I told her stories about Brian as a kid. I offered to teach her my fried chicken recipe. She smiled and changed the subject. They got married a year later. Beautiful wedding. White dress, fancy venue, too loud DJ. When he danced with me, he whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom. I couldn't have done any of this without you." I held on to that moment for years. Then the little comments started. "Brian, your mom calls a lot. Don't you think you need boundaries? Babe, you're always doing things for her. When you gonna do things for us? She's sweet, but she's kind of stuck in the past. She doesn't understand money like we do." Poison in small doses. At first, he defended me. "She raised me by herself, Carol. I owe her." But little by little, his tone changed. "Mom, can you text instead of calling? I'm usually in meetings." "Mom, I can't come by every weekend. We've got our own stuff now." "Mom, you're not helpless. You need to be more independent." Funny thing is, I've been independent long before he was born. I just forgot. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up, they get busy. I'd swile at the herd and kept making cookies for their kids when they finally came along. Liam and Sophie. Those babies lit up my life. They'd run into my arms yelling, "Grandma!" And for a little while, I could pretend everything was okay. But behind the smiles, something was shifting. You ever feel your place in someone's life shrinking inch by inch and you don't know how to stop it? I kept telling myself, "It's just a phase. He loves me. It'll get better." I didn't know it yet, but that birthday box of chocolates, that was the end of just the phase. That was the day my son decided I was worth more dead than alive. The year everything exploded, I turned 72. It was a gray, drizzly morning. I was standing in my little kitchen, flipping pancakes for one, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it wasn't Brian. No grandkids with balloons. No Cara with that tight little smile. Just a young delivery guy holding a shiny black box tied with gold ribbon. "Delivery for Ms. Evelyn Carter," he said. I signed for it, brought it inside, and set it on my kitchen table. It felt heavy, expensive. There was a cream envelope on top with my name and pretty writing. Inside, "To the best mom in the world. Happy birthday. Love, Brian." My throat tightened. He hadn't called much lately, hadn't visited without an excuse. Just seeing the best mom in the world in his handwriting made my heart do somersaults. Make me things were changing. Maybe they'd work through their boundaries phase. I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a box of chocolates that looked like they belonged in a museum. Dark milk, white, swirls of caramel, little gold flecks, each piece in its own little cup. I picked one up and sniffed it. Rich, sweet, and fancy. For a second, I thought, maybe I'll just eat one right now, just for me. Then the old habits kicked in. The petty part of me thought, Kara is gonna hate that he spent this kind of money on me. The soft part of me thought, those kids would lose their minds over this. I said, these are too nice to eat alone. Let the little ones enjoy them. And if I'm being honest, a small, mean voice inside whispered, let Kara see he can still spoil his mom if he wants. That voice saved my life. I put the card back in the box, closed the lid, grabbed my purse, and called a cab. The driver let me off in front of their 2-story house in the subdivision. Perfect lawn, seasonal wreath on the door. You know the type. I rang the bell. Carva opened the door. Her smile clicked on like a light switch. Oh, Evelyn, we weren't expecting you. We weren't expecting me either, I joked, holding up the box. These came to my place this morning from my son, but they're too fancy for me. I thought you and the kids would enjoy them more. You didn't eat any? She asked quickly. No, I laughed. Honey, one of those would probably cost more than my breakfast. I just wanted to share. Liam's face picked over the banister behind her. Grandma, is that candy? Back upstairs, homework. Now, she snapped. She took the box like it might explode. Tell Brian thank you for me and tell the kids Grandma loves them. She didn't invite me in. She never did. We're in the middle of cleaning day, but we'll call you this weekend, okay? I walked back down the front steps, rain misting my face, feeling that familiar ache in the chest. I told myself, at least he remembered. At least he said something. That's more than some others get. I microwaved leftover soup that night, watched my game shows, went to bed alone, a little sad, a little hopeful. I had no idea I just dropped a bomb in their kitchen. Next morning, my phone rang before I'd even made coffee. Brian, I smiled and answered, well, look who finally... Mom, he cut in, voice tight. Did you eat the chocolates? No happy birthday. No, how are you feeling? Just that. I'm fine, thanks for asking, I said dryly. Good morning to you too. Mom, I'm serious, he snapped. Did you eat them? Something in his tone made the hairs on my arms stand up. No, I said slowly, like I told you in the card I left at your house. I took him to Kara and the kids, dropped them off yesterday. Why? Silence. The kind that sucks all the air out of the room. Then he exploded. You did what? Brian, lower your voice, the neighbors. Are you sure? You didn't try one? Not even a bite? You didn't keep any at your place? Why are you talking to me like this? I snapped that. I opened the box. I didn't eat any. I put the card back on top. I brought it straight to your doorstep. Kara took it. The kids were upstairs. That's it. Now what is going on? He was breathing hard. I could hear him pacing. You ruined everything, he muttered. You always do this. You can't just accept to give. You have to make some grand gesture. That stung. What did I ruin? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He just muttered, I have to go, and hung up. I stared at my phone. You know that feeling when your gut knows something before your brain catches up? My stomach dropped clear through the floor. I tried calling him back. No answer. I texted Kara. Nothing. I made coffee with shaking hands. My kitchen felt colder somehow. Hours crawled by. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone lit up with Kara's name. Her voice was nothing like usual. No fake squeak, just raw tremble. Evelyn, we're at the hospital. What happened? The kids, are they okay? They started vomiting violently. Both of them and me too. I thought it was a bug. Then Sophie said, my mouth burns from the chocolate. We had to call 911. We're at St. Matthew's. All a blood drained from my head. Carol, I whispered, did you eat the chocolate? Yes, she sobbed. We all did. The kids each had 3 before I could stop them. I had 2. They tasted strange, bitter. I thought it was just expensive chocolate. I clutched the counter so I wouldn't fall. Tara, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Kara, you tell those doctors exactly where those chocolates came from. You tell them your husband sent them to me. I didn't eat any. I brought the box to your doorstep. Kara took it. The kids were upstairs. That's it. Now what is going on? She went quiet. You could almost hear the puzzle pieces clicking in her mind. Evan, she whispered, do you think... I think, I said, you need to tell those doctors everything right now. Later that evening, she called again from a quiet hallway outside their hospital room. I could hear beeping monitors and soft voices in the background. The kids are stable, she said. They're going to be okay, but... But what? I asked. The doctor said it's not normal food poisoning, she whispered. They found traces of arsenic. Arsenic? I'd only heard that word in crime shows and old murder stories. The amount isn't huge, she said quickly. That's why no one died. But the doctor said something that made me cold, Evelyn. What? The doctor said he swallowed based on the dose and the way it was delivered. He thinks the original target was someone older, weaker, like an elderly person with heart issues. Everything went quiet in my head. You know that feeling when a truth walks into the room and just stands there until you look at it? That was it. My son hadn't sent me a gift. He had sent me a tomb. Those next few days, I didn't sleep much. The police got involved. They took the chocolate box from Kara's house. They took statements from the ER doctors. They looked up where the chocolates were bought. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table with a pad of paper and a pen, writing down everything I could remember. What time the delivery arrived. Exactly what the card said. The way Kara's eyes flicked when she saw the box. Brian's exact words on the phone. Over and over, my brain replayed that birthday morning when I'd been sick the year before. The folder of bank statements on my table. Brian flipping through them, his eyebrows almost hitting his hairline. Mom, this is all yours? Just emergency money, I'd said. And something for you and the kids after I'm gone. I hadn't realized I'd just shown a drowning man where the life raft was, and then told him it was only his after I died. The detective on the case asked if he could record me telling the story. I said, record away. I had nothing to hide. Then he asked something that made my stomach twist. Miss Carter, has your son ever seemed desperate about money? I thought about strange late-night calls I'd overheard when I was at their house, about him snapping at the kids to be quiet because he was on an important call, about him saying, "I'll have your money Friday," in a low voice. I thought about Kara mentioning months ago that he seemed stressed, but he always brushed it off as work pressure. Yes, I said, but I didn't want to see it. They tracked the purchase of the chocolates to a specialty shop downtown. Security cameras showed Brian at the counter, paying with his own card. They found arsenic traces in his home office trash can. Same type as in the chocolates. Same type as in the kids' blood. It was like watching someone you love on surveillance footage committing a crime and realizing that was no editing, no misunderstanding, no context that makes it okay. He didn't know yet that the police were closing in. He didn't know his phone call with me would become Exhibit A. But I knew. I also knew exactly where he would run when it all crashing down. He always ran to the same place when he was in trouble. My younger sister, June. She'd always had a blind spot for him. Her golden nephew. She bailed him out of little messes, loan him money, hide him from consequences. I called her. June, is Brian with you? Silence. Then a guilty sigh. Evie, he's here. He showed up last night. He said Kara overreacted, that you're blowing things out of proportion. I didn't know what to believe. I closed my eyes. I'm coming over, I said. Don't let him leave. Evie, maybe we should calm down and don't let him leave. I hung up before she could smooth it over. As I drove to her townhouse, my hand shook on the wheel. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something harder. I'd spent 40 years walking into his messes as his mother. This time, I was going as his judge. June opened the door with tears already in her eyes. He says it's all a misunderstanding, she whispered. Tell me that's true. I can't, I said. Brian was at her kitchen table, hunched over, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee. He looked up when I walked in. For a half second, I saw my little boy, 6 years old, scraped knee, lip wobbling. Then his face hardened. Mom, he said, you shouldn't be here. I sat down across from him. Why? I asked. Afraid I'll ruin another one of your plans? His jaw clenched. You told them, he said, didn't you? You told the police. You told Kara. You told everyone. Yes, I said. I told them the truth, that my son sent me poisoned chocolates for my birthday. You weren't supposed to give them away, he snapped. You always have to be a martyr. Oh, I don't deserve nice things. Let me share. This is on you. I stared at him, stunned. My grandchildren almost died, I said. Your wife almost died, and you're mad at me for sharing? They weren't supposed to touch them, he said. You were supposed to eat them. You're old, Mom. You eat a few rich chocolates. Your heart stops in your sleep. Everyone cries. We have a nice funeral. I pay off my debts with the inheritance. Clean. Quick. He said it like he was explaining why a business deal went sideways. like my death was a spreadsheet error. June covered her mouth with her hand, horrified. "Brian," she choked, "how could you even think that?" He ignored her. He looked at me with something like disgust. "You've had your life. You've had your time. I've got a mortgage, kids, loan sharks breathing down my neck. I saw those bank statements, Mom. You've been sitting on $350,000 while I'm drowning." "That money," I said quietly, "is the reason there was always food on the table. It's the reason you went to college. It's my security if I get sick. It was supposed to be a blessing for you when I die, not a reason to speed it up." "You're selfish," he spat. "You say it's for me, but you won't help me when I actually need it." "I have helped you," I said, my voice finally rising. "For 40 years, I took overtime shifts so you could have brand name sneakers. I skipped vacations so you could have tutors. I co-signed your first car. I helped with your down payment. I watch your kids anytime you ask." I leaned forward. "But I draw the line at dying on purpose so you can pay a loan shark." He laughed once, bitter. "You're not even my real mother. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe deep down you always knew this was temporary." That one hit me in the gut. Not because it was true, because I'd always secretly feared, and he thought that. I felt something snap inside me, not my heart, my patience. "Look at me," I said. He did. I reached into my purse and tapped a little recorder I turned on before walking in. The red light blinked steadily. "I'm done," I said. "Done covering for you, done explaining you, done protecting you from consequences. I love you like you came from my own body. You chose to become a man who would kill his own mother for a check." I stood up. "You want to know what I realized?" I asked. "What?" he said, defiant. "I thought I was being a good mother. In reality, I was your accomplice." June sobbed quietly. I turned to her. "Tell the police." "Evie, still your call. The police." I walked out into the crisp air and took the deepest breath I'd taken in years. The weak woman, the one who thought loud meant endless forgiveness, died in that kitchen. The woman who walked down those steps was someone else.
That night, I cried until my chest hurt. I cried for the baby I picked up in that hospital, for the little boy who drew me stick figure pictures, for the teenager I defended when he stole from a classmate, for the man I thought he'd become. But most of all, I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who believed that if she just loved hard enough, everything would work out. When the tears finally stopped, there was this stillness. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, sat at my old kitchen table, pulled out a notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote, "No more being weak." Underneath, I wrote 4 names. Harold, my lawyer friend from church. Miguel, the investigator Harold recommended. Dr. Singh, the therapist I'd met once and liked. Me, the person I'd ignored for decades. Next to my name, I wrote, "I mattered too." The next morning, I walked into Harold's office with my back straight and my evidence in a folder. The recording, the doctor's notes Kara had shared, the list of times Brian had borrowed just a little over the years. Harold listened to the whole recording. When it ended, he turned off the speaker and sat there for a long moment, staring at his desk. He said, "Evelyn, this is brutal, but it's everything we need. I don't want him dead. I'm not out for blood." He said, "I know. We're not going to kill him. We're going to make sure he can't kill you or anyone else." He outlined the plan like a checklist. Move my savings into a trust Brian couldn't touch, even if I died. Update my will so he couldn't automatically inherit everything. Turn the recording and medical evidence over to the police formally. Investigate Brian's debts so loan sharks wouldn't come knocking on my door or Kara's. It was strange. For years, all my big decisions were about his future. Now, for the first time ever, my decisions were about my safety. Dr. Singh, the therapist I've sat in her office later that week, she said, "You're not suddenly becoming cruel, Evelyn. You're just finally giving your love some boundaries." "What if that makes me a bad mother?" I asked. She shook her head. "A bad mother lets her son on hurting people. A healthy mother says, 'This starts here, even if you hate me for it.'" I thought of something then. I said, kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. She smiled. She said, "That's your line. You hold on to that." People were shocked when I told them I was moving. "You don't have to do that," Harold said. "We've secured the house. The trust is set up. You're safe there." "I know," I said, "but I don't want to drink coffee for the next 10 years at the same table where I almost died by mail order." I sold a bunch of furniture, packed what I loved into boxes, and put the house up for rent, not sale. I wasn't ready to let it go completely. With Harold's help and my savings, I rented a condo downtown. The first night there, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the river and all the tiny headlights moving like fireflies. For 40 years, my view had been my little backyard, my neighbor's fences, the same tree Brian used to climb as a kid. Now it was the whole city. New lights, new noise, new life. I made myself wash the handful of dishes I'd used in my brand new sink. As my hands moved in the hot water, a thought hit me. For 40 years, I've scrubbed plates. Now I'm scrubbing my son out of my life. I laughed out loud. It felt a little wicked, a little free. I hired a stylist at Carol's suggestion, actually. Not because I care about fancy clothes, but because I realized I'd been dressing like I was apologizing for taking up space. We went shopping. I tried on a blazer that actually fit my shoulders, pants that weren't elastic at the waist, shoes that were sensible but stylish. "Look at you," the stylist said. "You look like a woman people should be careful with." I like that. I wasn't trying to be pretty. I was trying to be dangerous in the right ways. Miguel, the investigator, called me into his office a few weeks later. "Sit down, Miss Carter," he said. "This is a lot." He laid out folders, bank records, casino photos, loan documents. Brian hadn't just been a little behind. He'd been living on a pile of dynamite. 4 maxed out credit cards, a second mortgage on the house Kara didn't know about, the kids' college accounts drained, and that business loan of 60 grand from a company whose owners we did not want knocking on doors. Why didn't they come after me 10 yet? I asked. McGill shrugged. They were giving him time, he said, and he was probably planning to pay them with your money once he got it. I looked at the numbers and felt sick. All those years I told myself I was helping a little, I'd been putting Band-Aids on a bullet wound. Harold slid a paper across the table. Here's what we can do, he said. We can pay off the loan sharks directly through our firm so your personal info stays safe. In exchange, we take over the land on the house. I'm not paying his gambling debt, I said instinctively. Harold nodded. You're not. You're buying bat control. So they can't terrorize Kara and the kids. Think of it as buying a loaded gun out of a toddler's hand. When he put it that way, it made a bitter kind of sense. We did it. Quietly, legally. The business lender got their money. My name went on the paperwork. Brian's leverage disappeared. Then we sat down with Kara at my new condo table. She looked 10 years older than when I first met her. No lashes, no perfect blowout, just a tired mom in jeans and a hoodie. Evelyn, I can't let you do this, she said when we explained. It's too much. I'm not doing it for him, I said simply. I'm doing it for you and those kids. You're going to keep the house. He isn't. We refinanced. The mortgage went into her name with me as a quiet all-signer. We also set up a small loan from me to her on paper for the $60,000. It was structured so she could pay it slowly like an extra bill without it crushing her. I told her, you owe me nothing emotionally. You owe me on paper and numbers. That's it. Your real debt was surviving my son. She started crying again. I was horrible to you, she sobbed. I shut you out. I believed him. I helped him push you away. It's done, I said. We both let him run the narrative. No more.
By then, the police had enough to arrest Brian. They picked him up at work, in handcuffs, in front of his colleagues. I wish I could say that made me happy. It didn't. It just felt necessary. A news station got wind of the case. Local man accused of poisoning his mother with chocolates. They asked if I'd talk. At first, I said no. I didn't want to be a spectacle. Then I read more of those letters from other women and changed my mind. We recorded the interview in my condo. The reporter asked, how does a mother forgive a son who tried to kill her? I don't know if forgive is the word, I said. I know how to free myself from him. That's what I've done. She asked, what do you want other older parents to understand from your story? I looked straight into the camera. I want them to hear this, I said. Kindness without boundaries is not love. It's self-destruction. You are allowed to say no, even to your children, and especially to your children. The interview aired. People had opinions. Half the comments were, "How could a son do that to his mom?" The other half were stories like, "My daughter takes my check every month. I thought I had no choice. My son says I'm selfish if I don't put his name on my house. I thought I was alone." I realized something. This wasn't just about me and Brian anymore. This was a whole army of invisible mothers and grandmothers. And the trial hadn't even started yet.
Courtrooms smell like old paper and bad coffee. The day of the trial, I sat in the front row with Harold on one side and Carol on the other. Her hand shook in mine. Brian walked in wearing a suit, but the cuffed ankles gave it away. He was thinner. His eyes darted around the room, scanning for sympathy. When he saw me, he looked offended, like I betrayed him. The prosecutor laid out the case. The chocolates, the arsenic, the money, the recording. They played my voice and his on the courtroom speakers. Because I needed the money, Mom. It was going to be quick. No one would expect. "You're not my real mother." I heard gasps. Someone muttered, "Lord have mercy." Kara justified. She talked about their life, the stress, the fights, the day at the hospital. When the doctor said arsenic, my coffee cup slipped out of my hand. It shattered on the floor, and all I could think was, my husband bought that chocolate. She pointed at Brian. "He didn't just try to kill his mother," she said, voice shaken. "He was willing to let our children be collateral damage." My turn came. "Mrs. Carter," the prosecutor asked, "do you still love your son?" I took a breath. "I love the boy I raised, the one who drew me pictures and cried at graduation. That boy is gone. The man sitting over there, I don't know him, and I'm not required to be destroyed by a stranger just because I paid for his braces." The defense tried to paint it as addiction, stress, lapse in judgment. "What do you say to that?" the defense attorney asked me. "I'll say lots of people have stress and addictions. They don't all buy arsenic and rabbit and gold ribbon." The jury went out. 2 hours. That's all it took. Those were the longest 2 hours of my life. When the foreman finally stood up, the whole room held its breath. "On the charge of attempted murder," he said, "we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of aggravated poisoning, we find the defendant guilty." My knees went weak. Harold grabbed my arm. "The judge sentenced him to 14 years. Parole possible after 10. Your actions were cruel and calculated. You targeted the woman who saved your life as a child. You weaponized her love." When they led him away, Brian turned and yelled, "Mom, you're still my mother. You can't do this to me." I stayed seated. I didn't move, because for the first time in my life, I understood. I wasn't doing anything to him. I was finally doing something for me. After the trial, people expected me to disappear, to go rest, to enjoy my golden years. I rested for about a week. Then I called the community center. "I want to book a room every Thursday," I said, "for women over 60 who need a place to talk
honestly, about their families and their money. The receptionist laughed. That's going to be a big group. We called it the second half circle. The first night, 23 women showed up. Some leaning on canes, some holding grandkids' hands, some with their heads down like they were ashamed to be there. I stood up front, my heart pounding harder than it had in court. "Hi," I said. "I'm Evelyn. My son tried to kill me with chocolates." You could have heard a pin drop. Then a shaky voice from the back said, "My son keeps borrowing my disability check." Another woman, "My granddaughter has my ATM card. She says it's easier if she handles everything." Another, "My boy moved in 6 years ago and never left. When I ask for rent, he screams that I'm ungrateful." We shared. We cried. We passed around tissues and phone numbers. I wrote 3 sentences on the whiteboard. Your money is yours. Your home is yours. Your signature is sacred. Then I added the lane. Kindness without boundaries is not love. It's self-destruction. We practice saying no out loud. We practice, "I need to think about this." We practice, "Let me run this by my lawyer." The first time a woman in the circle whispered, "I changed my PIN and told my grandson he couldn't use my card anymore," we cheered like we were at a football game. The local news did another segment. This time it wasn't just the poison chocolate lady. It was grandmothers fighting back. We started a small nonprofit, then a hotline, then work spots. And suddenly my life had a new job. Teaching older women that they are not burdens. They are boundaries with legs. About 3 years into Brian's sentence, the first letter arrived. Prison envelope. His handwriting. "Dear Mom," it started. He said he was in programs. He said he'd found Jesus. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking about his mistakes. He wrote the word mistake a lot. At the end, he said, "I hope one day you can forgive me. I need your forgiveness to heal. Please visit me." I took that letter to Dr. Singh. "What do you feel?" she asked. "Annoyed," I said. "Tired. Guilty." Then annoyed at myself for feeling guilty. "That's honest," she said. "Do you feel an obligation to respond?" "The old me would," I said. "The new me is not so sure." She nodded. "You know what I hear in that letter? Is I need your forgiveness. I need you to visit. Very little about what you need." I went home and wrote a short reply. "Brian, I'm glad you're reflecting. I hope you continue to do so. My healing does not depend on seeing you or offering you forgiveness. I have built a full life and I am at peace. I wish you clarity and true accountability. Evelyn." I did not sign it, Mom. And you know what? I slept just fine that night. 10 years passed. Liam started college. Sophie learned to drive. The second half circle grew into the Evelyn Carter Foundation with real staff and a tiny office.
and a big dream. Then Harold called. "Brian is up for parole," he said. "You can speak at the hearing if you want." "Do I have to?" I asked. "No," he said, "but your voice matters." I've thought about all the women who sat in my group saying he got out and came right back to my house. So I went. The parole room was small. Fluorescent lights, plain chairs, a long table. Brian came in wearing a prison jumpsuit. He looked old, older than me, honestly. Hair thinner, shoulder slump. He spoke first. "I've done a lot of work in here," he said. "I understand now that what I did was wrong. I miss my kids. I miss my life. I want a second chance." He looked at me like he expected tears. I felt nothing, just distance. "Miss Carter," the tear woman said, "do you want to say anything?" I stood up with my cane. "Yes," I said, "I do." I looked at the board. 10 years ago," I said, "this man tried to kill me for money. That's not a teenager joyriding in a stolen car. That's a grown man calculating his mother's death." I looked at Brian. Since then, I've built a life without him. I help other women escape situations just like mine. My grandchildren are safe. That matters to me more than whether he gets to sleep in a bed without bars. I turned back to the board. I don't hate him. I don't spend my days wishing him harm. But I also don't confuse my personal peace with public safety. Your job is to protect the public. My job is to protect myself. I've done my part. Now you do yours. A few weeks later, I got the letter. Parole denied. Next review, 4 years. I put the letter in my file and went to lead my thirsty group because however long he stayed in there, I was not going back into the invisible prison I lived in for years. People ask me sometimes, "Do you regret adopting him?" I think about that tiny boy in the hospital, the way he clung to my necklace, the way he whispered, "We did it, Mom," at graduation. No, I say, I don't regret saving a child. I regret not saving myself sooner. I turned 75, then 78. They opened more second-half circles in other neighborhoods. We set up a scholarship for older women going back to school. We worked with lawmakers on better protections for seniors. On my 80th birthday, the foundation threw a fundraiser instead of a party. They made me give a speech. I stood at the microphone, looking out at a room full of women and their grown children, lawyers, social workers, grandmas in church hats. I used to think my story was a tragedy. Little boy loses his parents. Kind woman saves him. Grows up, tries to kill her. End of story. People chuckled nervously. "But that's not the end," I said. "The real story is what came after. The woman who finally realized her life had value outside of what she gave to her child." I paused. "If there's one thing I want you to take away from tonight," I said, "it's this. Kindness without boundaries is not love. It's self-destruction. If you're giving until it hurts, and the person you're giving to keeps asking for more while calling you a burden, That's not love. That's abuse in a nice outfit. I looked right into the imaginary camera in my mind, the one pointed at you now, wherever you are. I said, if you're sitting in a kitchen that doesn't feel like yours anymore, if your stomach knots every time your phone lights up with your kid's name, if you signed things you didn't understand because you were afraid they'd stop loving you, I leaned closer to the mic. You are not too old to redraw the line. You are not too weak to say no more. If a 72-year-old grandma who almost died from fancy chocolate can build a new life and help others do the same, baby, there is nothing stopping you from taking your first step. The room stood up. They clapped. Some cried, some laughed. I just smiled because I finally understood. My son tried to kill me for my inheritance. He failed. Instead, without meaning to, he gave me something way more powerful. A voice, a mission, a second half of life that belonged to me.